There's plenty of choice when it comes to boxing games in VR, but there has never been a straight-up Street Fighter until now. Haymaker is a very brutal yet technical fighting game that has been in development for over 5 years by just one person. This game released in early access in November, so there isn't much content yet. The graphics are basic, the music non-existent, and the sound effects are a little lackluster. But considering this is a one-man team, these are things that will improve over time. What's most important is that it has a solid foundation of fighting mechanics, which means every hit, block, parry, and grab feels very satisfying and believable when you pull them off. Surprisingly, despite the simple graphics, the tone and atmosphere of the game is very dark, gritty, and grounded. Due to the lack of lighting and shadows, it almost looks a little light-hearted. But once the combat starts, you'll realize this game is actually pretty serious.
It's the freaking bad!
Arkham Shadow is probably the most popular beat-em-up in VR, and is one I play regularly. So when I saw Haymaker, which on the surface looked like a pretty light-hearted arcade brawler, I thought it'd be an easy transition, but I was dead wrong. Arkham Shadow is an arcade fighter, which means you only need to hit the targets in time, follow the prompts, and you can single-handedly take out a whole group of enemies with ease. It also lacks a physics engine, which means the speed of your attacks is very lenient and forgiving. Haymaker, on the other hand, is a completely different beast and does not hold your hand. Firstly, the combat is completely physics-based. So if you throw a half-assed punch, it'll either just tickle the enemy or get blocked instantly. So right from the get-go, you need to throw all your weight and speed into every single punch if you want to do any damage. The harder and faster you swing, the more damage you'll do. So there's very real incentive to give 100% in every swing. If you're like me, coming from games like Arkham Shadow, this may feel like a steep learning curve, but when you do learn to play the game properly and respect the mechanics, it is a very, very satisfying game. Because every punch you land is through your own effort and not through any game handicaps. You earn every hit you land, because anything less simply doesn't register. Next is blocking and holds. Before an enemy attacks, you'll see every move they're about to make flash in a series of indicators. You can either block the attacks with your hands, or take a risk at attempting to catch their attacks. Blocking an attack does not stop the chain of attacks, so you need to continue blocking everything until they stop. After successfully blocking a string of attacks, their head lights up, which means they're vulnerable for attack. If you try to counter their attack midway, it won't interrupt or stop their remaining attacks, so it's very risky as you're making yourself vulnerable to the remaining attacks. Fortunately, you can interrupt their attacks by grabbing their fists and arms by opening your hand and using the grip button the moment you block an attack. But this requires both accuracy and timing. If you miss, you're just going to take multiple hits. But if you do manage to grab the enemy, it neutralizes them for a beatdown with your other fist. Or you can take it further by breaking their arm or even smashing them against the environment, which is incredibly satisfying. As for the game modes, there's an arena with many options such as enemy and friendly NPC count and health regen. There's also a roguelike mode where you complete levels and earn perks, health and power-ups after each wave. However, this is very difficult with very little health and no regen, so the arena mode is a better place to start. And lastly, the most important is practice mode, where you'll learn all the attacks, blocks, holds, weapons and specials. There is a lot to learn if you want to survive and fight effectively, so I'd strongly recommend starting in the practice mode to learn all the mechanics in order to get the most enjoyment out of the game. Another thing I love about this is the blend of animations with physics. In most games, when an enemy dies, you either see a cheesy death animation, or the physics takes over and they just flop down. But in Haymaker, there is a slight animation that influences the ragdoll physics. So just like in real life, when someone gets knocked out, they stagger back and fall to the momentum before going limp.
Try that again.
This small detail makes a huge difference in the believability of the combat. as they react, stagger and fall very realistically, which makes the combat feel that much more devastating and almost disturbing. Which leads me to my next point. The violence in this game is absolutely brutal, and it doesn't shy away from gore. However, it does feel very grounded in reality and doesn't go over the top, like Hard Bullet, where you're dismembering and torturing NPCs, which almost feels comedic. Enemies will bleed profusely as they take damage, and when they're low on health, they'll start pouring from the mouth and nose, leaving bloodstains on the environment and even on your hands, which is pretty gruesome. In fact, the violence engine is so realistic it actually reminded me of a notoriously violent and depraved PC VR game called Blood Trail, which is not a game I intend to play. But I do admire and respect the incredibly detailed physics of the NPCs, which all react very believably when injured, and in that regard Haymaker feels very inspired by it, although with much less violence, which in my opinion feels like the best balance of realism without leaving the player traumatized. This is still in very early access and I still have a lot to learn, but based on the time I've spent so far I can definitely recommend it to anyone who's thirsting for a serious fighting game. If you're used to arcade fighters like Arkham Shadow, this will be a difficult transition to make. But if you're willing to physically exert yourself, you'll find this a lot more rewarding. Plus your arms, shoulders and back will also get a serious workout. The game on Quest is $13.50 with my code VRCT, and the price will also increase over time as the game develops. It's also coming to SteamVR eventually, but for now they're focusing on the Quest version. As the graphics are quite simple, I personally prefer to play a game like this on Quest. I'll be posting more updates as the game develops, so feel free to subscribe if you want to see more like this. And be sure to hit the like if you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next.